We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Welcome to Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Philip Brasher, and our guest this week is Congressman Doug LaMalfa from California's 1st District. For our viewers who are not familiar with California, that's the large swath of the northeastern part of the state. And especially important, I think, for our viewers is that Doug is a farmer, rice grower there in Northern California, and we're going to tap into his expertise both on agriculture and on farm policy in our conversation today. First of all, Congressman, the House Agriculture Committee this week launched what is going to be a fairly in-depth review of Farm Bill programs. They started with conservation and the Conservation Subcommittee, which you're actually the ranking member. Republicans raised a number of concerns with USDA officials about the direction the administration is going and the emphasis that they are putting on addressing climate change. Did you get any assurances about those concerns this week?
Well, it wasn't. We had the Secretary of Agriculture in a previous hearing not too long ago, and we weren't getting a lot of assurances that they were not going to keep pursuing this climate change direction. With Chief Cosby here as the sub to the secretary on that, I think the conversation was a little more focused on what the efforts are for the conservation programs, and so that was positive. But it's going to be a top-down situation, and when you see the Biden administration coming up with this 30 by 30 program with by 2030 30% of all lands will have to be conserved, and I think us as farmers, we look at what we're doing as conserving already. It's also producing food and a economy, a tax base, the whole thing. But every farmer you know of that owns land or takes care of the land is going to see that it's in their best interest to have their land be in a long-term situation that's I'll use one of the magic words, sustainable. We've been farming rice. I mean, I'm visiting you from my home here this week as I'm laying low because of cold symptoms and such. But right out that window there in front of me, 90 years of growing rice here in Northern California. So I'd say it's pretty sustainable. We have the soil, we have the weather, we have the water storage behind me a few miles at Lake Oroville that goes back to a long held water right here in Northern California. We know what we need. We know how to do it. We know what we need to do. And we don't need a whole lot of bright-eyed people coming out from the government telling us how to do it better, because farmers are always looking for ways to do things better. And as technology comes in, people offer you these technological aspects. We've been precision leveling for a lot of years, and there's a lot more potential with how you apply fertilizer and track yields with GPS. So we're not too far behind the curve on that too. So what we need USDA and the administration to realize, and I don't know if they're going to realize anything, but climate change is a mantra for them. And so when we talk about applying that to how we farm, we want to sequester carbon in the soil. So, well, how do you do that? I guess is that they haven't given a lot of ideas other than something that would be along the lines of no-till. So, and a lot of people in the Midwest and areas have used no-till in a lot of crops successfully. I don't know how we're going to get away with that rice very long in rice, for example, because we don't drill our seed into the ground. And with any crop, anytime you're going to turn over a crop, if you plow the ground, if you move the soil, does that release all the carbon you spent all this effort supposedly tying up? So I'm not sure. It's going to take all of us to get the point across that what farming what agriculture does is pretty darn good, and that we aren't really supposed to be somehow to blame for this carbon situation. And I would remind everybody watching that carbon dioxide is 0.04%, 0.04% of our atmosphere, okay? And below 0.02, plant life dies off. So if we're too successful at this, we're going to be harming ourselves. But that is, we're already harming our economy, are harming our ability to produce in this country, whether it's agricultural product or manufacturing, by playing this carbon game.
As a farmer, Congressman, is there anything the government should be doing from your perspective to help farmers address this climate issue? Farmers have a lot of their customers down the road coming back to them and saying, we need you to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Should the government, what should the government be doing, or nothing at all?
Well, let's start getting the truth out there. CO2 is not a greenhouse gas issue. Everything, almost everything on the earth is carbon based as far as life forms and such. And so, yeah, when you're talking methane gas, there's improvements we can do. And a lot of people with dairies are working to capture methane from their effluent and such. And so, there's positive things we can do. Cleaner burning vehicles. I think with everybody being hell bent on electrification, well, the electricity has to come from somewhere. In my home state here, that we used to have 2 nuclear power plants. One was phased out in San Diego some years ago, and they're going after the second one down in San Luis Obispo, where I went to college, in a couple of years. And so that's, if you want to play the carbon game, that's carbon-free electricity, which is out the window. And they're also attacking hydroelectric dams, which is CO2 free with hydroelectric. So it's really a big part of, let's get the truth out about what the issue is. And so as we upgrade cleaner operating vehicles, fossil fuels are still by far the most efficient way of doing things. And I know what I'm saying here is not popular. We have a lot of people try to adopt the climate stuff in order to burnish their reputations and such, but there's a lot of just flat untruth getting out there about this. So if you want to focus on the things that work, it's continuing to have cleaner burning vehicles, do things about some of the other side effects. Methane is like 6 times more likely to do things in the atmosphere than CO2 ever would be. So, and I'm not pointing fingers to anybody else. Let's transition into this. Let's work at doing things better. But if you really want to get somewhere on this, agricultural products produced in this country versus somewhere else where they have a lot lower standards. Same with manufacturing. If we do it in this country, we're going to do a lot better on overall achieving better environmental effects. And I mean, there's a million other things you can say about it, but I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, we'll come back to that issue. I wanted to ask you about the Build Back Better bill, the $1.7 trillion bill that President Biden is hoping to get through Congress. Senator Joe Manchin in the Senate today reiterated that it's dead, but he's still open to a smaller bill. He's still open to climate provisions, and those include $90 billion in ag and forestry. You've obviously in Northern California had a lot of problems with fire. Wouldn't this funding for forest management go a long way toward helping California deal with that issue and prevent these devastating fires in the future?
Well, that's one of the tricks of DC. You put some good elements in a great big giant spending bill, and so it's like, oh, LaMalfa's against forest spending, and he talks about it all the time, forest management. It's like, well, you put a tiny portion of 1.7 trillion. The numbers just officially hit $30 trillion worth of national debt was the announcement in the last 24 hours. So the spending has to be addressed. I mean, taxpayers, it isn't my money. It's not Republicans' money, it's whatever. This is taxpayer dollars, and this is future debt. And so when you have these giant spending packages that have a little bit of candy sprinkled into them, forest management is extremely important. We had well over 1 million acres of fire in my district this year, and in previous years, it's just the numbers are 6 digits and higher, it seems, and that's becoming almost the norm of that, which I don't accept. So, when you put a few pieces in the bill and say, you're going to vote against that, that means you're voting against forestry. Well, that's nonsense. I don't accept that, because a whole bunch of the plan has nothing to do with really building back better. So they're more like socialized spending. And I'm just not going to go for that. We can have a honest conversation about forest spending, forest management, and what needs to be done there, and not put it into a poison package, so to speak. So I'll continue to fight for that there, and I'll also tell my constituents that if they misunderstand the signals coming from Washington that we're against forest management, well, we'll walk them through those numbers on the so-called Build Back Better, because there seems to be no compunction about throwing trillion-dollar packages on the table that have really unfocused spending goals in them. I mean, there's a bunch of money left over from all the COVID relief, which was about $6 trillion, all told in new spending. And so now they're trying to reprogram that. So it's like a big trough full of money that is not being responsibly handled. So it doesn't mean we're against doing these things. We're absolutely for better forest management, and when and getting Forest Service to get moving here. We alluded a little bit ago previously about in the hearings this week. We talked about this before camera here, that the staffing is not getting up to speed in Forest Service or in some of the conservation programs and such. They're not getting it out the door. We're still doing COVID cave dwelling right now on so much of this, because government workers seem to be the most afraid to go back to work where everybody else still has to get out and get it done. So people are getting really tired of that, and I'm getting tired of it, because we can hide behind the fig leaf of staying home because of COVID. Well, the forests burn anyway, whether the government shows up or not. So we got to get real about this stuff. And if thinking throwing money is going to solve it when people aren't putting out the effort, they're not staffing it. What that points out to me is that we need a lot more help from the private sector. We have a logging industry, for example, in Northern California in the West. It's been decimated by regulations and being driven out of the business due to those regs and costs and such, that we need to put those people back to work, not somebody with official government uniforms on, because they're going to get the job knocked out a lot more faster and efficient anyway, and bring a real economy back to this area. We still need wood products. We still need paper products. Why do we have to import them from Canada or somewhere? Because we're too caught in our tracks here to not be able to produce them here in already overcrowded forests. We have so much biomass. We have so much wood product that needs to be getting out and being put to use, instead of densely crowded forests that are a fire danger to themselves. So again, I could get really wound and go all day on this too, but we got to focus on what's right and what's accurate here.
Yeah, Congressman, talking about competition, there's an effort in Congress to make the U.S. manufacturing more competitive with China and other developing nations. There's a bipartisan bill in the Senate. There's a bill on the floor this week in the House called the America Competes bill. Has a number of provisions. Some of them would affect agriculture, but the basic thrust is to try to make Democrats say is to make manufacturing and U.S. producers more competitive with China. Republicans are pretty well united against that bill. Where does it go wrong?
Well, as you hit on there, the Democrats' title of their bill is the Competes Act, and our conference is calling the Concedes Act, because it really is not putting the teeth in place to deal with China the way it needs to be dealt with on trade and a lot of other issues. As we're getting ready to launch into the Olympics here, there's a lot of controversy whether Americans or others should be supporting those Olympics wholeheartedly. And so China has shown, whether it's human rights issues or just general trade, the handling of the virus and such, and our own supply chain issues in this country. We depend so much. Like how many Ford F-150s are sitting in a plant, I think in Louisville or something, unable to get delivered because they're 98% built, but they don't have the chips for them. And maybe it's not just F-150s, but American built cars on this soil, because we're so dependent on these imports. And this bill does not make us competitive in that effort. It instead concedes to China the positions that they're already taking advantage of us on. Not unlike the situation with the Paris climate issues. China and those some of the other countries over there get to continue producing CO2 at a rate and increasing that rate at least till the year 2035, I think it is. And we're all ramping down our economy and constricting ourselves on that. So this bill has a long ways to go to become right. So it's not going to get, I think, any Republican support in the House. Now, if it goes over to the Senate and comes back fixed up, I can be hopeful that maybe there is something that will have some teeth in it on dealing with China. You talked about Build Back Better a minute ago. There's elements of Build Back Better that are okay, but when you're talking, you know, maybe 100 billion, let's just say in round numbers, of a 1.7 billion, that's not a good ratio of effect for your dollar. You wouldn't spend, you know, $17 at the store and hope to get $1 worth of value when you shop for anything. So why should the taxpayers be treated that way too? You know, I know there's differences of opinion on what the priorities are, but let's again get back to reality on this. And so the Competes Act, we're calling the Concedes Act, you know, because we have these little games, but it really does have too much concession towards China. Well, we need to be getting tough with them. We need to stop importing our pharmaceuticals, our chips, food products. They're not playing right by us. They don't have our best interests in mind. Look at the aggression they're doing on different fronts militarily, you know, sending, well, again, that's a different issue, but we see what's going on.
Well, that'll have to be the last word. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us today on Washington Week in Review.
Well, I appreciate having me on. One of the things we'll focus on for California, we have to build more water storage. We had a great bit of rainfall and snowpack, but we're going to still fall way short of what our capacity is. And we're going to see agriculture devastated, especially south of where I am in the Central Valley and such, with water supplies being at 0% allocation, 5%, and the water still rushing out to the ocean through the Delta because they will not store and trap the water that we could be doing. So that is a critical issue right here in our state. And for Americans across the country, where certain crops that we grow here, 90 to 98% of them are grown in California, of certain vegetable and fruit crops that are going to have to be replaced by imports. And so we've got to get our act together here, and we need everybody on board to show the importance of that. So I appreciate you having me on today. We got to keep doing battle, sir. Thank you.
Right. We should have you back for another conversation on the water issue. Thank you.
I'd be delighted.
Thanks for being here.